My sister seduced my husband, hoping to marry him and take over his $400 million fortune. She manipulated him into changing his will and tried to steal everything from me. But in the end, her greed caught up with her, and she lost everything. I never thought it would come to this, but here I am, telling my story of betrayal, heartbreak, and the twisted path that led me to this point. I hope this serves as a cautionary tale for anyone who thinks they're immune to the ugliness of greed, and a warning that sometimes the people you trust most can be the ones who hurt you the deepest. My name is Emily, and for most of my adult life, I believed I had it all. I married Mark, a handsome, successful, and charming businessman who had built an empire from the ground up. By the time we were in our early 30s, he was worth over $400 million. We lived in a sprawling mansion in the hills, drove luxury cars, and seemed like the picture-perfect couple. But behind closed doors, things weren't as perfect as they seemed. I have an older sister, Lauren, who has always been, well, different. Growing up, she was the type to manipulate and scheme her way through life. She always had a way of getting what she wanted, whether it was attention, approval, or possessions. She could charm people with a smile, but deep down, she was as cold as ice. Despite our differences, I always tried to include her in my life. She was family, after all. I never imagined that the woman I'd trusted my entire life would be the one to destroy it. It all started a few years ago when Lauren moved back to town after a messy divorce. She didn't have much. She'd blown through her alimony and wasn't exactly a career woman. She had a string of failed relationships and no real direction in life. To say I was concerned for her would be an understatement. I offered her a place to stay, and she took me up on it without hesitation. Mark and I welcomed her into our home with open arms. I figured that maybe being around family would help her get her life back together. What I didn't realize was that this decision would be the beginning of the worst chapter of my life. At first, things seemed normal, but then I noticed little things. Lauren would get uncomfortably close to Mark when they were talking. She'd linger a little too long when she hugged him. Sometimes, I'd catch them exchanging these knowing glances, but I brushed it off. I thought maybe I was being paranoid or that I was overreacting, but it kept happening. Slowly, I began to feel the distance growing between Mark and me. He was spending more time at work, and when he came home, he seemed distracted, like his mind was elsewhere. And Lauren? She started dressing in ways that caught his attention. Skinny jeans, plunging necklines, and seductive smiles. One night, I came home early from a dinner with friends, and I heard voices coming from the living room. It was Mark and Lauren. They didn't know I was home, and I overheard something that would change everything. "I can't keep living like this, Mark," Lauren said. "I know you want me. I can feel it. And when Emily's gone, it'll be just us. You and me. We can have everything we've ever dreamed of." My heart dropped to my stomach. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My sister, my own sister, was trying to seduce my husband. But what hurt the most wasn't just the betrayal. It was the way she spoke about him, like he was some prize to be won. It was obvious that the money was a huge part of her interest in Mark. The next few days were a blur. I confronted Mark, and he admitted to everything. The affair had been going on for months. He was sorry, he said, but the damage had already been done. He explained how Lauren had been playing both sides, luring him in with her charm and manipulation. But the worst part, he confessed that Lauren had been pushing him to divorce me for a while, telling him that if they were together, they could have everything. She knew how to speak to his ego, telling him that together, they could take over the world. I was devastated. Not only had my husband betrayed me, but my sister, my own flesh and blood, had been plotting behind my back, playing the long game to steal my life from me. But what I didn't know was that Lauren's end goal wasn't just Mark, it was his fortune. Lauren and Mark's affair escalated quickly after that. They'd go out to expensive dinners, vacations, and private parties while I stayed at home, nursing my wounds. Mark seemed to be falling deeper under her spell, and Lauren wasn't just interested in the man, she was eyeing the money. I could see it now, in the way she'd smile when she'd talk about the future, the way she'd drop hints about how Mark's fortune could be better spent. It was clear that she had an agenda beyond just being his wife. And Mark, he was completely blind to it. He was so smitten by her that he couldn't see the manipulation. He didn't realize that Lauren was only after one thing, his wealth. The final straw came when I found out that Lauren had convinced Mark to change his will. She had orchestrated a meeting with a lawyer behind my back and had him update his estate plan to leave everything to her in the event of his death. I confronted both of them about it, and Mark looked like a deer caught in headlights. He told me he didn't think it was a big deal, that Lauren just wanted to secure their future in case something happened. But deep down, I knew it wasn't about security, it was about control. Eventually, things came to a head. I kicked Lauren out of the house, but by then, it was too late. Mark and I separated. It was a bitter divorce, and I found myself fighting for my fair share of what what we'd built together. The legal battle was exhausting and humiliating, but the worst part, the damage to my family. I lost my husband, my sister, and my sense of self-worth. In the end, I ended up with a smaller share of the fortune, but it wasn't about the money anymore. I just wanted out of that toxic situation. Mark and Lauren eventually got married, but their relationship was a farce. He wasn't the man I married anymore, and she was still playing the game. A few months ago, I got a call from Mark's lawyer. It turns out that Lauren had been slowly draining the fortune through questionable investments and shady deals. She had been pretending to manage his wealth, but in reality, she was squandering it all away. Mark had lost a significant portion of his money, and Lauren, who had been living the high life, was now facing a lawsuit for fraud. The last laugh, however, wasn't mine. Mark's empire was crumbling, and Lauren had underestimated the power of greed. She had manipulated her way to the top, but in the end, her own greed would be her undoing. Today, I'm in a much better place. It's been a long road to healing, and I've had to learn to trust again. I've started my own business, and while it's nowhere near the kind of wealth I once had, I'm proud of what I've built. I've learned that sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away from the people who hurt you, no matter how much it stings. As for Mark and Lauren, I haven't heard from either of them in months. I don't think I ever will again. The damage is done, and there's no going back. To anyone reading this, don't let greed control your life. It can destroy everything you love, and in the end, it leaves you with nothing but regret.